The silence in my house was a tangible thing, a presence shaped over 7 years of solitude. That evening its rhythm was set by the steady drumming of rain on the roof and the deep, resonant purr of Jasper, a warm, sleeping weight on my lap. My rituals were simple, worn smooth by time. A cup of chamomile tea that would grow cold, the soft click of knitting needles, and the ghost of Michael in the empty rocking chair opposite me. It was on nights like this that the emptiness felt less like a void and more like a familiar, if quiet, companion. Jasper's head jerked up, his ears twitching towards the window. The sound was wrong, a harsh screech of tires that tore through the melody of the rain. A car door slammed, too loud, too urgent. Then came the pounding. Not a knock, but a frantic, desperate hammering against my front door that made my heart stutter against my ribs. I pulled the door open, and the storm rushed in, carrying my grandson with it. Connor stood on the porch, drenched and trembling like a stray animal. Water streamed from his dark hair, plastering it to his forehead. His jeans were smeared with dark, drying mud, and fresh, angry scratches marked his hands. But it was his eyes that truly terrified me. Wide, red-rimmed, and blazing with a pure, undiluted fear I had never seen in him. "Grandma," he choked out, his voice raw and shredded. "I need your help. I don't know who else to trust." He thrust a thick manila envelope into my hands. It was cold and damp, sealed with a spiderweb of thick packing tape, as if someone had tried to lock a nightmare inside. "Hide this, in the garage, somewhere no one would ever look." "Connor, for heaven's sake, what is this? You're scaring me," I managed to say, my own voice a whisper. He gripped my arm, his fingers like ice. "Don't open it," he pleaded, his gaze darting past me into the dark, weeping street. "Don't tell anyone, especially not Dad." The final condition came out as a desperate, broken whisper. "And Grandma, whatever you do, don't call the police." "Connor, if something happens to me," he interrupted, his voice dropping so low I barely heard it over the rain. "You take this straight to the FBI. Ask for Agent Diana Rodriguez. Tell her Operation Goldmine." Then he was gone. He turned and sprinted back into the downpour, swallowed by the darkness. A moment later, the squeal of his old Toyota's tires sliced through the night, leaving me alone on the threshold, clutching the secret he had entrusted to me, the cold from the envelope seeping deep into my bones. The garage was a cathedral of memories, smelling of dust, old wood, and the faint lingering scent of Michael's pipe tobacco. I moved like a ghost through the aisles of a life once lived, past his pristine workbench, a shrine I couldn't bring myself to disturb, past boxes of Christmas ornaments and faded photographs. My mind raced, a frantic counterpoint to my slow, deliberate steps. What did you just agree to, Eleanor? What terrible thing is he involved in? In the farthest, darkest corner, behind a stack of rusting paint cans and a mildewed tarp that smelled of neglect, I found a crevice. I slid the envelope into the darkness, my heart pounding as if I buried a body instead of a package. Sleep was impossible. I sat at the kitchen table, a cold cup of tea forgotten in my hands, and stared out at the rain, each drop a ticking second towards some unknown catastrophe. The following morning, the local news provided a horrifying answer. The screen showed a smiling, vibrant young woman with intelligent, kind eyes. Madison Hayes, 22, an accountant at Cornerstone Tech Industries. Missing. Her car had been found abandoned at the Cherry Creek boat launch. The reporter, his voice grave, stated there were signs of a struggle. A cold dread, colder than the envelope, trickled down my spine. There was something in her face, a flicker of recognition I couldn't place, a ghost in my own memory taunting me. The knock on the door came just hours later. 2 detectives stood on my porch, a tall, stern man named Peterson, who looked like he carried the weight of every crime in Denver on his shoulders, and a sharp-eyed woman, Santos, whose gaze seemed to catalog every wrinkle, every lie on my face. "Mrs. Walsh, we're following up on the disappearance of Madison Hayes," Detective Peterson began. his voice devoid of warmth. "Do you know your grandson Connor was involved with her?" They showed me a grainy security still. It was Connor, his posture tense and aggressive, arguing with Madison in a stark, rain-slicked office parking lot. The timestamp read 4:47 p.m., the day before she vanished. "Mrs. Walsh, when was the last time you saw your grandson?" Detective Santos asked, her voice deceptively soft, like velvet over steel. The lie felt like a betrayal of everything I believed in, but Connor's terrified eyes were burned onto the back of my eyelids. 3 weeks, I said, my voice surprisingly steady, a small miracle. "I haven't seen Connor in 3 weeks. Santos held my gaze for a moment too long, and I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. "If he contacts you, you need to call us immediately," she said, handing me a card that felt like a lead weight. "This is serious." The moment the door closed, the walls of my home felt like they were pressing in on me. The quiet was no longer a companion, it was an accuser. Protect your grandson and betray the law? Uphold the law and betray his trust? There was only one path to the truth, even if it meant breaking my promise. With a resolve I didn't know I possessed, I marched back to the garage. My hand shook as I used a box cutter from Michael's bench to slit through the layers of tape. I spilled the contents onto the smooth, worn wood where he had once fixed our world. A cascade of printed emails, dense bank statements, internal memos, and several unmarked USB drives. My fingers, trembling, found a single handwritten note. "Grandma, if you're reading this, I'm in more trouble than I can handle. They'll kill her. Give this to the FBI, not the police. Ask for Agent Diana Rodriguez. Tell her about Operation Goldmine. I'm sorry. I love you. Connor." My eyes, old but still sharp, scanned the documents. Cornerstone Tech Industries. The words appeared again and again, a malignant refrain. It wasn't a tech company. It was a front, a sophisticated web for laundering money, over $20 million. The sources made me feel ill. Drug trafficking, human trafficking, weapons sales. The numbers on the page were stained with blood. Then I found it, an email chain. Madison Hayes had discovered discrepancies in the financial reports. She had raised questions, and the responses from the executives were chillingly clinical. The final one, from a CFO named Richard Caldwell, dated 4 days before Madison disappeared, was a digital death sentence. "She'll be dealt with by end of week. I'll take care of it. Make sure all digital records are scrubbed." The realization was a physical blow, sucking the air from my lungs. Madison wasn't a victim, she was a target, and Connor wasn't a suspect, he was her partner. They had uncovered this horror together, and now they were running for their lives from people who had judges and police in their pockets. Driven by a new cold fear, I crept to the front window and peered through the slats of the blinds. A dark sedan, sleek and anonymous, was parked across the street, its engine off, its windows tinted to a predatory black. A sentinel. They knew. The net was closing, and I was trapped in the center of it. The pressure intensified that afternoon when my son David and his wife Sarah arrived, their faces masks of anger and raw fear. "Mom, the police interrogated us for an hour!" David exploded, his voice cracking under the strain. "They said Connor was written up for accessing files he shouldn't have. They think he hurt that girl." Sarah's eyes, usually so kind and gentle, were hard with accusation. "You're protecting him, Eleanor," she said, her voice trembling. "You've always protected him, and now look where it's led." I felt the weight of the hidden envelope like a lead apron across my chest. "I haven't seen him," I repeated, the lie now a fortress I was building around the terrible truth. That night, my private line rang, the sound unnaturally loud in the suffocating silence. "Grandma." It was Connor, his voice a strained metallic whisper on a bad connection. Madison is alive. We're safe for now. We had to run. They were going to kill her. Who, Connor? Who? There's a cop involved, he said, the words flooding out in a terrified rush. Detective Marcus Flynn. He's on their payroll. He's the one who told them we were gathering evidence. You have to take the evidence to Agent Rodriguez tomorrow. Her life depends on it. Mine, too. But the dark sedan was still there the next morning, a shark waiting in the calm waters of my suburban street. My salvation came from an unexpected quarter. My neighbor, Patricia, a bubbly woman whose world revolved around her petunias and bridge club, called. "Eleanor, darling, I'm off to Boulder for a few days. Would you be a saint and water my geraniums? They're such divas in this weather." "Of course, Patricia," I said, and an idea, desperate and wild, sparked to life. "Actually, could I trouble you for a ride? I have an urgent errand to run across town." When Patricia pulled up in her sensible, unassuming sedan, I threw a hastily packed overnight bag into the back seat, the manila envelope hidden securely at the bottom of my large tapestry purse. As we pulled away from the curb, I watched in the side mirror as the dark sedan slid out from its post behind us. "Patricia," I said, my voice tight with a fear I could no longer hide.
"This is going to sound insane, but we're being followed. That dark car. We need to lose them." To my utter astonishment, my sweet, gardening-obsessed neighbor grinned, a wild, fierce light igniting in her eyes. "Hang on to your hat, Eleanor," she said, her hand settling on the wheel with a familiar grace. "You'd be surprised what this old girl can do. Let's just say I wasn't always a gardener. I drove getaways in my misspent youth. What followed was a masterclass in evasion that would have left me breathless had I any breath to spare. Patricia weaved through Denver's morning traffic with the cool precision of a racetrack driver, taking sudden, gut-wrenching turns down side streets, cutting through a narrow delivery alley that scraped the mirrors, and doubling back in a dizzying pattern. Finally, she slid the car smoothly between two hulking SUVs in a vast mall parking lot and killed the engine. We sat in silence, holding our breath, as the dark sedan sped past the entrance, helplessly lost. "Thank you, Patricia," I breathed, my heart hammering a frantic tattoo against my ribs. "Anytime, dear," she said, patting my hand as if we'd just returned from a delightful shopping trip. "Now where to? The Federal Building, I presume." The FBI Federal Building was a monolithic structure of glass and steel, intimidating in its sterility. Special Agent Diana Rodriguez met me in a quiet interview room. She was a woman with a calm, assessing gaze that seemed to absorb every word, every tremor in my voice, every unspoken fear. I laid it all out. Connor's midnight visit, the envelope, its damning contents, Operation Goldmine, the corrupt Detective Flynn. When I finished, she gave a slow, deliberate nod. "Mrs. Walsh," she said, a hint of steel in her quiet voice. "I've been investigating Cornerstone for 3 years. You just handed us the master key." I was swept into the silent, efficient machinery of the state. They placed me in a safe apartment, a bland, nondescript box with beige walls and a view of a different anonymous part of Denver. The hours that followed were an agony of suspended animation. I drank weak tea from a styrofoam cup and watched the television, the flickering images failing to distract me from the churning in my gut. Then, at midnight, the waiting ended. Breaking news, helicopter footage showed a swarm of FBI agents in dark windbreakers descending upon the sleek glass headquarters of Cornerstone Tech. The screen split to show another raid, a suburban home. The banner at the bottom of the screen listed the arrests in stark, bold letters. CFO Richard Caldwell, several executives, and, my breath caught in my throat, Detective Marcus Flynn. My secure phone rang, its trill making me jump. "Eleanor? It's Diana Rodriguez. It's done. We've arrested the primary targets. The network is dismantled." The relief was so profound it felt like a physical collapse. I sank into the beige sofa, tears I hadn't realized I was holding back finally spilling over. And Connor? We're setting up a secure channel for him to come in. He and Madison are safe. You did it, Eleanor. You saved them. Just after 1:45 a.m., the phone rang again. Grandma. It was Connor, his voice thick with tears and a relief that mirrored my own. Did you do it? I saw the news. Yes, sweetheart. Everyone's been arrested. You're safe now. You can come home. I was so scared. He confessed, the dam finally breaking. I was so scared I'd gotten you hurt. I'm so sorry, Grandma. You were brave, I told him, the truth of it filling the empty spaces in my soul. You did the right thing, even when it was terrifying. That's the definition of courage. I've never been prouder. A week later, Connor sat on my porch swing, Jasper purring contentedly in his lap. The spring sun was warm on our faces, the world washed clean and new. I was so afraid, I admitted softly, not of the men in the sedan, but of failing him, of making the wrong choice. I know, Grandma, he said, reaching over and taking my wrinkled hand in his. But you believed me. When no one else would, when it looked the worst. You believed me. That's what family does, I said, squeezing his hand, feeling the solid, living warmth of it. We believe in each other, even in the dark. The following Sunday, he brought Madison with him. She was more beautiful than her photo, her intelligent eyes now alive with a grateful, peaceful light. She pressed a bouquet of vibrant sunflowers into my hands. Mrs. Walsh, she said, her voice trembling with emotion. I don't know how to thank you. You risked everything for us. For justice. I didn't need thanks. I simply hugged her. This brave young woman who had stared into the abyss. This stranger who was now a part of the tapestry of my family. We had all been through the storm, and we had found our way out together. My life returned to its quiet rhythm, but the woman who lived it was irrevocably changed. I had discovered, at 72, that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the love that burns brighter than it. And on my sun-dappled porch, with my grandson, his brave friend, and a purring cat, I understood that the most powerful forces in the world are not money or corruption, but the simple, unbreakable bonds we choose to protect.